If you don't see those flaws in the first 2 years, that's not a sign they're perfect. It's a sign that you're in love, which is beautiful. But you should also know, I am in love. I need to wait a little bit and see what happens. And that is the whole point of feminism, which people misunderstand all the time. Feminism is about being able to do what you want, which can be a trad wife, which can be being provided for by a man, but that then locks you out of other options. If you don't properly start your career, if you don't get proper education, if you maybe don't even get a job, then in the end, you will not be able to leave this person. You need to make your own experience and you need to take risks sometimes. You cannot fully trust anyone. You can't even fully trust yourself to not do bad things. That is a normal part of life. If you think you can do no evil and don't hurt others at all, you're not being honest with yourself. Hey everyone, something really shocking and really sad happened in the self-help manifestation community on YouTube, and I want to take this space to talk about it and to take some lessons from it and to give a very nuanced and balanced idea of the whole situation so that we can all work with it and grow from it. If you don't know who Liz and Landon are, if you have no idea, that's okay. You can still take something from it because the lessons I'm mentioning here are mostly about maturity in relationships and just reflecting on relationships in general. So there's probably something you can take from it. I will also explain what happened so that you're not out of the loop. And if you do know what happened, then that's good. I'm trying not to be preachy in this video. I just want to give very real advice, very realistic advice, because it's always very easy to say, if someone cheats on you, leave them. If you are emotionally dependent on them, it's not that easy. And I've been in that position myself of not being able to end relationships where I felt I was emotionally dependent. And I think it's really important to give ourselves grace and to take lessons that are realistic from this rather than screaming and shouting and hating and doing all of that. At first, I didn't want to make a video about this at all because there's already so much noise on it, which is obvious because everyone wants a piece of it. Everyone wants to talk about it. But then last night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and my mind started racing about this topic, and I just could not stop thinking about it. And I realized I need to make a video because I had to pour my thoughts about all of this out into my notes app while my boyfriend was sleeping next to me, and I hope I didn't wake him or anything. I was trying to be really, really quiet, and putting all of those notes out of my brain made it possible to sleep again after like 2 hours of me having all of these thoughts about this. And it made me realize I really just need to make a video. Thankfully, I have the time to do it. So we're going to look at it together. You and me are going to talk about how we can grow from this, what we can learn from this, so that we can really take something positive from it in the end. Especially because I think I mostly talk about spirituality, self-help, tarot, witchcraft. In that bubble, there are a lot of older people like me. I'm 33, which isn't older, but you know, compared to probably the wizard Liz's audience, it is older. And I figured that probably nobody in my audience cares about this, but I think it's still a good intro to talk about relationships and maturity and what I've learned in my life in general and what I think this situation can teach us. So what even happened? If you know what happened, you can skip this part, but for all of those who have no idea who the wizard Liz and Landon are, I will just explain it very briefly for the next 1 or 2 minutes. So the wizard Liz is someone who has millions of subscribers across YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I believe she first became very big on TikTok. Then she started making YouTube videos, like longer form videos. They are very motivational, very intense a lot of the time, very honest and very direct. That's kind of her way of speaking. Her way of giving advice is very straight in your face, and that helps a lot of people who vibe with that sort of, you know, tough love kind of approach. Then last year, I don't know the exact timing. I just know they got engaged around September 2024. She met and then got engaged very quickly to a man named Landon. They had previously DM'd each other on Instagram, and then they had a very fateful encounter in an airport where they met each other for the first time, ended up going on a trip together, and from then it went really far. He said, really fast, I mean. He said, I love you within the first few days. Within the first few weeks, he said that he wants to marry her, and they did get engaged very, very quickly. And as we have now learned, Liz is also 4 months pregnant. 2 days ago, I think it happened now, or 3 days ago, she also made a story saying that he had cheated on her or had planned to cheat on her. We don't know a lot of the details, and that she is leaving him, because in all of her videos, basically the message is, you are worth a lot, know your value, and then move on when you realize that someone doesn't appreciate that value or doesn't treat you in a way that aligns with your values. So in order to, act in alignment with her beliefs and her values, she did have to leave him, and did that as far as the news are right now. So they are not together anymore. And she announced that she will sell the engagement ring, which costs around 100K, and give that to single mothers, donate that to single mothers, because the implication is, of course, that she will now be a single mother because she left him. She's 4 months pregnant. Now, this story hit the internet really hard because people love the wizard Liz. They love her really tough love attitude of just giving you honest and intense advice. Whether it's always good advice is a different topic that we're obviously not going to speak about in this video because it's not about that. But it's very divisive, intense, know your own value advice. And this happening to her after she has been very much in love with this man was really shocking for a lot of people, because as it is, when you have a lot of followers, you become sort of idolized. People idolized her. They also ended up idolizing the relationship and thinking there can be no bad in that relationship. They are perfect for each other. It was a fateful encounter. So for a lot of people who tend to have very strong parasocial relationships with the creators that they watch, it was a huge shock. So why are we speaking about this on my channel? Why am I going to contribute to all of the noise that's out there about it? I think that this is a momentous occasion where millions of people care about this, and millions are also using this to promote an idea of hatred and of disappointment in this world, and it's exacerbating all of the issues that we have anyway with patriarchy, with brutality emanating from men towards women. And this occasion is making this a lot, it's amplifying it, and it's having a lot of people hating on him, understandably, because he cheated on her. But it also feeds into this very black and white, divisive worldview of you can never trust anyone, even though that is what we're looking for as people. We're looking for ultimate security in our relationships a lot of the time, but it turns out you can't trust anyone, so best not to get into relationships at all, etc., etc. The whole narrative that is, it seems like a consolation to be able to externalize all of that evil behavior and to say all people, especially all men, are bad. We can't trust anyone. And I think that worldview is not helpful to us in the long run. So I do want to speak about that in detail. So who am I even? Why am I talking about this? I'm Anya Esma. I'm 33, so I'm a little bit older. I've been through a lot of things, and I think I have some wisdom to offer about all of this. And online on my YouTube channel, I usually teach people techniques of self-development, such as astrology or tarot, but also general spiritual stuff, general philosophical thoughts that I have. I put them on YouTube, I put them on Patreon, and that's the kind of content I create. So thinking about relationships, thinking about human psychology has been something that I've essentially been doing all my life, at the very least since I turned, I would say, 15, 16, when I went into my first relationship, and also started, troubleshooting, learning about relationships, learning about human connection, learning about human psychology. And since then, that hunger for knowledge and that hunger to understand how people work and what is good for us and what is not good for us, it's still there, like 17 years later, now that I'm 33, and I've been through a lot more. So there's a lot that I have to add to this discussion. And I think it's great that so many younger women, like early 20s, mid 20s, also take up space and also give advice on these topics. But sometimes I feel like a little bit of maturity is missing in the discussion, and a little bit of life experience, which is not a bad thing. I think it's absolutely great that we're all talking about these things, that we're all being honest with each other with what we struggle with. But sometimes, the internet makes people take up a role of authority that are maybe very young and that haven't figured it out themselves yet. But if you are very self-confident in yourself, and I would count myself as that as well, because I'm not 50. I don't have um, a lot of life experience. But if you think that you are so grown up and so smart, and how to give advice to other people, a lot of the time you realize years later that you didn't give very good advice, and you didn't know what was going on, essentially. Which doesn't mean that that's not valuable. I think it's really valuable if people in their mid-20s give advice to, I don't know, teenagers, for example. Sometimes even older people can learn from people in their mid-20s. I'm not saying you have to be old in order to be wise. And at the same time, a lot of wisdom comes with experience from relationships and from connections with other humans. And that wisdom can be passed on through the internet now, which is a wonderful thing. So what I want to do is add a bit more nuance, add a bit more balance to the discussion, and really talk about 9 lessons that we can take from all of this. So in this video, I want to talk about why millions of people cared about what happened to Liz. Why do we care so much? What is up with us that we care? Why I also think that we can learn from it in a very wholesome way, in a holistic way, to make ourselves better people, to promote our growth. And I just want to share my perspective as someone who has been through relationships and has seen the other side of it, being in a very happy relationship myself now. I also want to make it clear at the start, I know I'm giving a lot of disclaimers here, but I think it's really important to say that I'm not judging anyone in the situation. Well, I'm kind of judging Landon, because it's hard not to if you cheat on your pregnant fiance. But I think since I'm making a video from the perspective of a woman, this could be taken as me saying, oh, Liz should have known, or she should have done things differently. That's not what I'm trying to say. Everyone makes the experiences they need to make, and they grow from it. And in no way do I want to imply that she should have known, she should have done things differently, or anything like that, or it's her own fault. It's not about that. It's really just about finding our own agency in this situation, and finding how we can learn spiritually, mentally, physically from this situation for our own life. So I'm never speaking about the situation directly, because we simply do not know enough. We see a little bit online, but that's not a lot to judge people on. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying she should have known better, she should have done this, she should have done that. That's not how life works. We all need to have these experiences, and we all need to learn. And yet we can maybe learn to grow from this situation on our own. I've already said that I'm really into self-help, but I haven't talked about my own relationship history really ever. And I want to give you a brief overview so you know what perspective I'm coming from, because it's really important when you listen to someone's opinion on something or someone giving advice, that you know where they are coming from, so you can see if that advice would even apply to you, if you think it's valuable, or if you are maybe like, I don't want to take advice from that person. So I've been in 3 very serious relationships so far in my life. One of them was 11 years. 6 of those years were a long distance relationship because the person lived in California. I am German myself, so it was a very long distance relationship. It lasted for 11 years. And in the end, I realized that I had developed quite a bit of codependent habits. If you don't know what codependency is, you can look it up. It's a very complex thing, essentially feeling responsible for your partner's emotions, for your partner's growth, for your partner's career, what your partner does every day, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very draining, but also from my side, a very toxic attitude to have towards a partner, and to become codependent and try to, make sure the other person is good because your own well-being depends on it so overly much, which is normal in a relationship, but not to that degree. So, getting out of that codependent relationship, I got into another 3-year relationship a bit later, which I also experimented with having an open relationship at that time. However, it was also in a relationship that had quite a bit of abuse, and I didn't manage to leave it for a long time. After 3 years, I finally managed. And then I got into another relationship, the one that I'm in currently. It's been 2.5 years now, and it's absolutely wonderful. And I feel like I found a person that I truly want to build something with, and that I feel, we're out of the honeymoon phase that takes about 2 years, and we see each other for who we really are, because you can't quite depend on that before the 2-year mark. But I'll talk about that later. And I know that with this person, I want to build something, and I want to be with them and stay with them. And I get treated wonderfully. I am very well, taken care of emotionally. And that is what matters most to me in a relationship, as I've noticed. I'm pretty securely attached now, as we tend to be when we are in a relationship that is very compatible. But I would say in former times, I was more of an anxiously attached person. I was always very worried that the relationship might end, or I was worried that I wouldn't see the person often enough, et cetera, et cetera. So I was more on the anxiously attached side, and that part of me is really healing in this longer relationship where I have so much security that I can feel safe, even when, things happen that formerly would have triggered some anxiety in me. And I'm fully monogamous now, I should also say, even though I had open relationships in the past and experimented with dating, etc. I realized it just wasn't for me. And I just enjoy monogamy more because building something together is much easier and much less stressful in that way. So let's talk about why we care. Why do I care so much that I make a video about it? Why do you care so much that you're watching this video? I think this whole situation between Liz and Landon speaks to 2 of the worst fears that we as humans have, or that we as women especially have, because one of the fears doesn't apply to people who cannot have babies. So listen, the first one is being cheated on. An obvious one. If you love someone, if you are in a monogamous relationship and they emotionally or physically cheat on you, it's a terrible thing. It breaks your trust. You are heartbroken. That's one of the worst fears, obviously. And the second fear is especially being cheated on, being betrayed, being left when you are pregnant or when you just had a baby. Now, these fears are very real because it is a fact that statistically many men who maybe didn't cheat before start cheating when their wife is pregnant or in the first year after they've had a baby. So I am in no way saying that this is an unreasonable fear. Both of those fears are very real and very scary. My own mother was a single mother with 2 children, and it was very difficult for her because she essentially had no help from any community and was on her own mostly. And that fear, it goes deep. it goes very deep if you've been raised by a single mother, the fear of being left, the fear of maybe even not wanting to have children to avoid being left alone. So, with those fears that are triggered within us, of course, comes a lot of hatred towards the people who do that to us. In this specific context, it's mostly about heterosexual relationships, about men cheating on women, and women being so deadly afraid of that and being afraid of being left alone with a child, essentially, or also just being emotionally scarred by being cheated on. But I think the issue is that this leads to a lot of hate as well, a lot of generalized hate. In the reception of this scenario, a lot of people are just, being hateful towards men as a whole. And it's absolutely understandable and justified because the patriarchal system that we live in hurts all people, but it hurts men and it hurts women, but it very much and unproportionally hurts women a lot more. A lot more is on the line for us when it comes to the brutality that we experience in the patriarchal system, the inequality, and all of those issues. So I'm in no way saying, by the way, that we shouldn't be scared of these things and that the patriarchy isn't something that um, needs to be torn down. Whether hatred is the way to do that is another thing, though. Whether hating men or demeaning men is the way to do that is another thing. I am convinced that in the end, in order to make the world a better place, men need to take responsibility for the internalized misogyny that they have within themselves. They need to take responsibility for taking better care of women, protecting women, doing a better job, especially when you are in a position of power as a politician, to protect women, etc., etc. However, I'm not speaking to these people right now. I'm speaking to you. I don't think a lot of male white politicians are going to be watching this. Who knows? But in the end, I'm talking to you, to my audience. So that's what this message will be focused on. I'm not going to focus on all of the societal aspects that need to change, but how we can also find our agency in this situation and find our power in it. So let's start talking about the 9 lessons that I want us to take from this momentous occasion of Liz and Landon and the whole cheating scenario, her being left alone while she was pregnant 4 months or is pregnant 4 months. The first thing I want to really convey is that we need to stop idolizing people and having an idealized version of them in our minds. That is the first biggest lesson that we can take from this. And that applies in 2 ways. It applies in the first way that as a viewer of Liz and or a viewer of Landon, I don't know, nobody watches his YouTube channel. He had one, I guess, back in the day, but anyway, as a viewer, we tend to idolize people that we see a lot from, especially if we don't see everything and we just see the highlight reel. We tend to think that these people are perfect. That, for example, Liz is, I don't know, the perfect partner, that Landon is the perfect partner, that they have the perfect relationship together, that it's spiritual, that it's deep, that it's wonderful and beautiful and everything that you imagine your dream relationship to be like. And I think that idolization hurts us in the end because it gives us unrealistic expectations of ourselves, how our partners should act, how we will find a partner as well, magically. And it's better to really stop yourself when you notice that you are starting to idolize someone and starting to take every word that someone says without doubt in your mind, without a grain of salt, without applying it to your situation and thinking about what is true for you intuitively. You just take it in and you take it as truth. And I know the younger you are and the less you know about yourself, about how you want to grow, it just happens that we do this. It happens. Unless you have a very natural aversion to authority like I do. I have a very natural aversion to taking people's word for something because You can never know what someone has gone through. You can never know who you are comparing yourself to. So it's best to take everything with a grain of salt. You can learn from other people, sure, but you should always reflect, is it true? Is it helpful for me? And now the second way that this applies as well, stop idolizing people, is with your partner. Because, or anyone you are dating, situationship, relationship, whatever it is, because we idealize and we idolize and we project onto our partners as well. That leads me to the second lesson here, which is, if you can't see your partner's flaws, that is normal, but it does not mean that they do not have flaws and that you do not have incompatibility. Because for the first 2 years, we are in an absolute honeymoon phase, usually with people. Everything is fine. You might have little fights, but they work out in the end. But you're already seeing the issues that you will have for decades to come if your relationship lasts that long. You will already see those in the first 2 years, but they won't feel as bad because you feel like we can solve this, we can change this. And the issue here is that we tend to think, if we don't see any huge red flags within the first 2 years, that it must then be absolutely fine. Some people even make this period shorter. They think 6 months are over. I think the honeymoon period is over. So let's go. This is my partner for life. Some people say that after a year. But in my experience, it does take 2 years for the really serious issues to show up and for you to realize the patterns that you cannot deal with after all, that your partner is not going to be able to change, that you're not going to be able to change, because it's just an incompatibility that is not workable. And you realize that usually at the 2 year mark, which is why a lot of relationships end then. So if you can't see any flaws and it's all green flags and it's all wonderful, you're being treated beautifully, they're saying that they love you, etc., you're getting flowers, you're getting whatever you need, physical intimacy, emotional closeness, emotional talks, even if you get all of that and you see no flaws in that person, just wait. Just wait a little bit. Maybe they are perfect for you. Maybe you are perfect together, but you're not going to know that for sure until about the 2 year mark. And then after that, even, at 7 years, a lot of people, that's like the second point where a lot of people break up. And it also depends on your life circumstances. Maybe you are done with your degree at university. Maybe you are starting a new job. Maybe you are meeting a lot of new people because you have a new hobby, and all of that will change and influence the relationship, and you need to grow together to really make it through. So if you don't see those flaws in the first 2 years, that's not a sign they're perfect. It's a sign that you're in love, which is beautiful. But you should also know, I am in love. I need to wait a little bit and see what happens. Not buy into the fantasy of immediately, being love bombed, essentially, being told that they love you and all of that. Because for so many people, it works out, maybe. There are plenty of people who get married, maybe not plenty, but some who get married after 3 months. And that's a beautiful story. They say, we got married after 3 months and we're still together 20 years later. Beautiful. But that doesn't mean that that is the standard that you should go for, because then you just buy into this fantasy rather than really reflecting whether someone is right for you. Just because you want to tell that story later too, you want to be able to say, yeah, we got married after just 3 weeks and now we're still together. That's great, but that's not the ideal. The ideal is that you build a relationship together that's sustainable, and not that you stay in it because you're dependent, because you think it's your fairy tale and you don't want to see the reality or any of that. That leads us to the third point. Liz said this herself in her video, which I appreciated a lot. She said this in the Q&A with Landon, which was uploaded before she knew that he cheated. And she said, do not make yourself dependent on the other person in the relationship. In her case, she said, do not depend on your husband. Do not overvalue money. Essentially, I think she did not say that, but I will say it now. Don't overvalue money. Just because someone can buy you something expensive doesn't mean they will be a good father, doesn't mean they are a good partner for you, doesn't mean they will support you through every change that you go through. They will love you through pregnancy. it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there's no underlying attitude of wanting to provide for someone within your partner. And if you make yourself dependent on your partner, you cannot leave anymore. And that is the whole point of feminism, which people misunderstand all the time, with all of the trad wife content coming out, with all the people wanting to just be taken care of, wanting to live the easy life, having a man take care of you. What you're forgetting is that feminism is about being able to do what you want, which can be a trad wife, which can be being provided for by a man, but that then locks you out of other options. If you don't properly start your career, if you don't get proper education, if you maybe don't even get a job, then in the end you will not be able to leave this person. If Because you will be able to leave them, let me correct that, but it will be a lot harder than if you have built yourself up, both spiritually, mentally, physically, monetarily. And that's so important today, because the messaging a lot of the time is just find a man who provides for you, and then everything will be okay. But you will be dependent on that person. And that person can die, they can cheat on you, they can, I don't know, do anything essentially. And unless that person literally buys you a company and gives you a bunch of money, you're not independent. And even then, one can argue that you are dependent on them still. So that is the third lesson we should take from that, which Liz said herself in her video, which I absolutely love. Be independent, keep yourself at least a tiny bit independent, so you always have an out. Of course, you need to depend on each other in a relationship. That is the definition of a relationship, because you relate to another person, you depend on another person, sometimes for emotional, sometimes for physical consolation, or for financial help as well. That is normal, but the baseline should still be you can still live on your own. You still have the possibility to leave them if need be, or survive if something, God forbid, happens to them. I just want to throw in here that if you're listening to this, a lot of these things are a matter of maturity, and they are lessons hard learned. So even if you listen to this and you still do the exact opposite, that is normal. It's not going to protect you from all sorts of pain and from all sorts of experiences, because we are meant to have these experiences. So if you consume a lot of that self-help content, don't think that you are bad if you don't act by it. It will help you eventually, but still, imbibing it, learning it, studying it is still a far cry from actually applying it in your life, which is why I think it is great to see that Liz is following her own advice and her own values that she has basically set herself, and she's upholding them now, because she is leaving him the first time she even sees a trace of he might have cheated or he might have planned to cheat. And I think that is so important. It doesn't mean that's right for everyone. I know couples where someone has cheated and they are still together and they're great together. That can happen as well. But it's a matter of how can you work on it? Do you have set values for yourself that you want to live by, and then acting by it, you know? Okay, the fifth lesson is going to hurt, and the sixth lesson is going to hurt as well. This is where we go deep into the shadow work, into the work of the parts of ourselves that we do not want to see, because this whole scenario shows us things that we don't want to see about ourselves as well. The fifth lesson that I have learned in my life personally, maybe you don't have to believe this, but it is something that I have seen over and over again, is that everyone is capable of everything if it is under the right circumstances and under the right pressure and under the right environment. And by that, I want to counteract this idea that we always believe that we could never do something like that. We could never cheat. We could never or even our partner, our partner could never cheat on us. They could never do that. Yes, they can. And you can cheat as well. That is the essence of being human. We make mistakes and we cannot avoid all of them, because we have not experienced all of the circumstances that could exist that would drive us to cheat on someone. That is not at all an explanation. It does not justify it in zero ways. But what I want to draw attention to is that the more we think that something is not going to happen to us or we could not do it ourselves, the more we put ourselves at danger. Because we have this idea, especially when we are young, that we are invincible. You know, for example, people who get their driver's license first, they don't expect to be in a car crash. They're like, I learned this, I can do this. And they firmly believe that they're not going to be in a car crash. And a lot of people end up having accidents after, they get their license first. Because the more you think you are safe and things are not going to happen to you, the less aware you will be of the seed of fear, doubt, hatred within you that could drive you to do these things. And that applies to everything. I think, yes, there are some legitimately evil people in the world who do bad on purpose and willingly and knowingly. But the largest part of people who do things that we consider morally wrong, evil, or bad are people who did not think themselves that they were doing something evil. They thought they were justified. And that leads me to the sixth lesson as well, which is don't externalize all of those evil traits or bad things people do to others and think that you could never do it. That goes hand in hand with the fifth lesson, because you are capable of everything. You are able to do everything, just like every other person in the world, especially if you don't have set values for yourself and set morals and ethics that you live by. You are fully capable of everything. I thought I wouldn't be capable of staying in an abusive relationship for as long as I did, but I did. And I thought I wasn't capable of doing some of the bad things that I've done that hurt people. And still, it happened. I did it. And you need to realize that if you don't have a strong core of values and morals and ethics that you really hold yourself to, it's very easy to get into the kinds of circumstances that drive you to do things that you will end up regretting. So if someone thinks they're not capable of doing something bad or evil, whether that is cheating or hurting other people physically, then that is the first step towards you not having done the work to realize that you are capable of it under the right circumstances, and that we need to really have the self-control to not do these things. If you think you can do no evil and don't hurt others at all, you're not being honest with yourself. There's probably cognitive dissonance. You've hurt people, but you've convinced yourself that it was justified. And the same thing might be happening in this situation as well, because Landon, I know, I don't know the exact details, but I have heard that he made stories that he still loves Liz. And the fact that he doesn't recognize his mistake, he didn't apologize for it, and he says he still loves her, shows that in his mind, he has not fully understood why he did that and what it means that he cheated on her. And that is another thing. I think it is the worst habit that people have after they do something like this, whether it is cheating, whether it is doing something else bad, hurting people physically, whatever it is. The next morning, the next day, whenever, they say something like, I don't know what came over me. That wasn't me. And that is the exact issue. That is the exact point where you are missing the self-reflection, where you are missing the capability to think about, yes, that was me. I did that. I did that, so it was me. But why did I do that? And simply saying, it wasn't me, I don't know what came over me, as if you were, I don't know, ridden by a weird entity or something. It just shows that there's no self-reflection and that it is very likely to happen again. Because only if someone says, I know why I did it and I'm sorry and I need to work on that and I have a plan to work on it, then it might not happen again. But if a person externalizes all of it and it's like, I don't know, that wasn't me, it couldn't have been me because I'm a good person, then they're not going to be able to see their flaws and they are not going to be able to work on it. And they also will likely do it again. Very few people wake up and choose violence consciously and willingly. Most of the time, it's a process that happens where someone gets in a situation, they have certain emotions, they have certain thoughts, and then it just rolls on. They are in maybe a situation of stress and they are put into the right circumstances with the right people, with the wrong people. Better to say it like that. And then they do something that they would have never done otherwise. So even if the cognitive dissonance doesn't let you believe that it was you who did that, it still was. And it still was you under those circumstances who didn't have top of mind the morals, the ethics, the values that they want to follow and that they want to build in life. So even if your brain is trying to find reasons why it was perfectly reasonable to do this bad or evil thing or hurt someone, just know that it is not, it is still not morally right and still not morally acceptable, and you need to reflect why it happened. And if we look at the larger political situation in our world, we also see this elsewhere where we are justifying, not we, God forbid, but some people are justifying that it's okay to starve people, to kill people, to murder people. In specifically right now, what is happening in Palestine, what is happening in Gaza, somehow people have convinced themselves in their mind that it is justified to murder people and that it is justified to starve them of food, of water, to bomb their hospitals, etc. And that conviction comes from somewhere. And not every single person who does that is bad. And in the end, it just happens to us, and we need to reflect why it happens to us and why we buy into that sort of thinking system. I just realized that the fifth and the sixth thing were actually the fourth and the fifth thing. But whatever, we'll continue with the video. So now comes the actual sixth thing. The world isn't black and white. It's not black and white. And if we dismiss people too fast, and if we too fast don't give people a chance, it just leads to us being disconnected from basically everyone. If we think that every man is a bad person, for example, I understand that. I still kind of think that myself, and I still have that thought system in my mind as well, because we need to protect ourselves as women, and we are or in a lot more danger than cis men, as women, as trans women, as anyone. But still, we need to retain a certain kind of openness towards the world, and we cannot see the world as black and white all the time, as good and bad all the time, as 100% morally right and 100% morally wrong, because that's not how the world works. It's a lot more complex and nuanced than that, and we need to recognize that. And that goes along with the fourth and fifth point as well, of recognizing that you could do bad things as well if you convince yourself they are right, or if you are put in a situation where you have no other choice, or you do have a choice but you don't make the right one. It happens. The seventh lesson, why am I showing a 2? Seventh seventh lesson that is really important is know your values. I have said that before, and I want to relate this to a specific thing that I saw in the Q&A that Liz and Landon posted. Now, I don't want to judge their relationship. I'm talking from my own experience, but the sort of teasing that they had in that video was a little bit too serious. It is meant playfully, it is meant to be fun. But if you look at your own values, and one of your values is respect for your partner, especially in public places or on a public platform, that would not work. It would not work, because we are now seeing that people are drawing the wildest conclusions from all of that. Landon said some very, in my opinion, bad things about Liz, where he literally was teasing her, but he named things that he hated and that annoyed him about her. And we somehow, before the cheating, everyone saw that as sweet teasing. Teasing is, in my opinion, a fun little thing in a relationship to a point. But the point becomes so often we get to this point where it's not fun anymore. And that happens so quickly. It's like children who play with each other and who like beat each other a little bit, but gently. And then one person accidentally beats too hard on a spot that maybe the person already had a bruise. And then the person starts to cry, the kid starts to cry. And that's exactly what happens with teasing in relationships a lot. Because underlying under that teasing, a lot of the time, is actual things that bother you about your partner, but you just tease them with it until it becomes serious or until you hit a point where they have already been criticized by, I don't know, their parents or previous partners. And then they take it seriously and it's not teasing anymore. And I think that's something to be super aware of, that I try not to tease my partner at all, and I don't want to be teased as well. And that sounds like a spoil sport. We do tease each other sometimes, but I'm very, very mindful of how hard we go at it, etc., and how what we're trying to say with it. Are you really just trying to say a criticism, or are you teasing the person, or are you just wrapping it in teasing and you want to criticize them actually? And that is just one of the values that I have. It's a value of respect, and I don't have that with everyone in my life, but with my partner I do. So know your values and act by them in the relationship. That can mean anything. Maybe you do want an open relationship, or maybe it's just okay for you if your partner flirts with someone. Maybe it's not okay for you. These things happen. And we just need to find our own values and what is okay for us. And the only way to find that really is experience, just like I had, seeing if an open relationship would work for me, if it gave me more freedom, but it was just a mind fuck in the end, and it was too much to work on. Try things, see what values are important to you, know yourself, know your ethics, and then you have a good basis to find a relationship or just be a generally good person that is actually good for you. And communicate that clearly with your partner as well. And also find a partner who ideally knows their own values and what they want to live by. Then the eighth thing I want to say is just recognize love bombing. Life isn't a fairy tale. I've talked about that before. There are people who get married after 3 months and then they stay together for a lifetime, but that's not the norm, and you don't have to fit into that fairy tale idea. It's actually better if you don't, because in my opinion, people who get married after 3 months, they were just lucky that they found someone, or maybe it was fate that they found someone that they're so compatible with. Sometimes they become dependent on each other and they can't leave each other anymore, even though they would like to. These things happen. So don't idealize these sorts of fairy tale relationships, and recognize when someone is love bombing you and see it as a red flag. As I said before, we need to give people some grace. We need to be open to getting to know people and not throw them away at the first red flag that is really tiny. The whole ick scenario. Something gives you the ick and you immediately stop dating someone. That's not always the right thing to do, because sometimes it just needs a bit of work. But also recognize when there's just too much love right from the start, when they're too attached right from the start, because that can be a sign that there's something deeper behind it, like a need that wants to be fulfilled that they have, and they think you can fulfill it, so they latch onto you. And that's not always good. So be aware of that. Before I say the ninth and last thing that is really important and a great conclusion to this video, I want to remind you, if you enjoyed this, if you watched till here, which I've babbed on for a long time, subscribe, like this video. It does help. Check out my Patreon if you want to. I also have an Instagram, and yeah, I'm happy that you found your way here. On my Patreon, I talk about slow living this month, about bringing slowness as a luxury into your life, even if you have the busiest life of everyone. I also have a YouTube video coming out soon about intuition and how it gets blocked and how you can free it again. So if you're interested in any of that, subscribe, like, do all the things, follow me on Instagram, etc. So let's talk about the ninth thing and the conclusion. I want to alert you to the fact that you cannot control everything. You can control how you react when things happen, such as Liz reacted when she found out that Landon was cheating or planning to cheat. and immediately left him. But you're also meant to make some experiences. By watching this video or 1,000 other advice videos, you cannot avoid pain. Pain is a part of life. It's going to happen in one way or another. So don't think that the more you are in your head, the more you're trying to protect yourself, the more you are guarding yourself and closing yourself off to people that you think might be bad because they've done one wrong thing. The more you do that, the less you will do in your life, the more you will, hide inside, stay inside, not meet new people, and just end up not making experiences that you need to make in order to grow. We are meant to live. And one thing I did was that through those now 17 years that I've looked into self-help things and tried to understand human psychology, myself, others, human connection, I thought that maybe through that I could avoid pain. And I did in a lot of ways, but not in all ways, because you just simply can't. And I think I sometimes blocked myself from new experiences, from making new friends, because I was too quick to dismiss people. You can't avoid pain. Know your values. That's the most important. Stick with your values. Know why you have those values. Know if you maybe need to question some of those values that you have from your parents, from your the way you were socialized, etc., etc. But then act from that, but act. Don't become passive. Don't lock yourself in because you're so scared of the world. A lot of these things that I mentioned are a matter of maturity. They are lessons hard learned, as I said before. So even listening to this and thinking, might as well give up now. If even Liz gets cheated on, I will never find a guy who doesn't cheat on me, then don't give up, because you need to make your own experience and you need to take risks sometimes. You cannot fully trust anyone. You can't even fully trust yourself to not do bad things. That is a normal part of life. And I think the biggest mistake we make is that we think we know other people, we think we know ourselves, and then we think, okay, 90% sure this person isn't going to do something bad to me. Or even 100% sure. You can never be 100% sure. You can't even be 100% sure of your own behavior in stressful or difficult situations. So don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so hard on others. Make experiences, take risks. You need that in order to become more mature, to learn what you want, to learn what you don't want. And I know that the hardest thing in all of this is to retain openness to other humans, because it's so easy to just say, might as well not even try. But that's the easy route to take. And the route to self-growth, oh, my voice is kind of failing. The route to self-growth and to becoming a fully formed person and just knowing what you want is painful. That path is painful, and it takes you taking risks. And it takes you not locking yourself in, but keeping your heart open to the world. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to make the experiences that you need to make in this lifetime and that you're here to make. All right, that's it. This is a long ass video. I'm very happy if you stayed till here. I really enjoyed going deep on this and really explaining my thoughts very deeply. I hope that you learned something from this. Tell me in the comments if you have any thoughts on this, if you learned something from it. Please do. I would love to discuss this scenario further and what we can learn from it, or what you think about what happened with Liz and Landon. And that's it. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Subscribe, like, look at my Patreon, look at my Instagram if you want to. And I will see you very, very soon.